Today's story is about the rental experience of two sisters, from the netizen magical girl Nayuniu. Let's just call her Nayuniu. In 2017, Nayuniu and her best friend established a tattoo studio in Xinxiang, Henan, and rented a house near the studio. The house had 2 bedrooms, a living room, and a kitchen, where they lived for a year and a half. During this period, there were often some strange noises in the house, but at that time, the two did not care, thinking it was because the house had poor sound insulation. It was not until the second half of 2018 that they realized the problem. The living room became very dark, even needing to turn on the lights during the day to see clearly. Moreover, whenever the living room was unattended at night, there would be a lot of noise, accompanied by the sound of things being knocked to the ground. After these things happened, the two sisters decided to buy an Alaskan dog. But ever since this dog came to their home, as long as the two returned to the bedroom, the dog would bark wildly somewhere in the living room, leading to many complaints from neighbors. As a result, they had no choice but to send the dog away. The night after sending the dog away, around 10 o'clock, Nayuniu was sitting in front of the computer desk in the living room watching videos. At that time, her best friend was in the bathroom, and Nayuniu suddenly felt a sound similar to breathing in her ear, very clear, as if someone was sitting beside her. So she went back to the bedroom and sat on the bed to continue playing with her phone. After playing for a while, she heard her best friend come out of the bathroom, and Nayuniu shouted to let her clean the floor of the living room. Her best friend had cleaned for less than 3 minutes when she suddenly screamed and ran into Nayuniu's bedroom. She said she saw a human-shaped dark shadow in the living room. After hearing this, Nayuniu thought of the breathing sound just now, and without saying anything, she took her best friend out. After going out, the two found a beverage shop to sit down. Then her best friend said that when she was mopping the floor, she clearly saw a human-shaped thing, very close to her. The person was wearing a large cloak, about 1.7 meters tall, very dark. After hearing this, Nayuniu told her best friend about the breathing sound she just heard, and the two were already very scared at this time. Because the beverage shop would close at 1 o'clock in the morning, the two had to take a taxi back to the community. The community has a security room, and the two waited in the security room until around 4 in the morning, and they found an excuse to ask the security guard for help, saying that there was a water leak at home, and asked the security guard to go upstairs with them to have a look. The security guard and the two sisters went home to check and found that there was no water leakage, so they left. Then Nayuniu searched the internet for relevant information, saying that playing the Great Compassion mantra might be helpful, so she turned on the computer and started playing. During this time, the two did not dare to sleep, sitting next to the sofa at the door until they heard the crowing of a rooster, and then they slept for a while together. At 10 o'clock in the morning, Nayuniu immediately called her mother and told her about this. After her mother heard, she let her call her aunt, because her aunt believed in Buddhism and often went to the temple. After the call was connected, Nayuniu put on the speakerphone, so her best friend could hear it too. Her aunt told them on the phone to find a willow branch, buy some cinnabar, and whip every corner of the room with the willow branch and sprinkle cinnabar. Just as she was talking, a row of spotlights in the living room and the main light suddenly went out. Nayuniu's first reaction was that the light bulb had exploded, possibly due to a circuit breaker. But then she saw that the Great Compassion mantra was still playing on the computer, and the two sisters took a look and immediately ran to the door. But at this time, the door could not be opened. In an emergency, Nayuniu kicked open the door, and after going out, her legs softened and she knelt on the ground directly, breaking her nails. Her aunt was crying anxiously on the phone, asking Nayuniu what was wrong. The two told her what had just happened while going downstairs. Her aunt said that this thing was not shallow, and let Nayuniu and her best friend go to buy willow branches and cinnabar as soon as possible and do as she said. But the two turned around and couldn't find a willow tree, so they had to buy 2 boxes of cinnabar at the pharmacy. Her aunt also told Nayuniu on the phone that this kind of thing is the weakest around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, not noon as said on TV. On the contrary, noon is their strongest time. Looking at the time, it was only 3 o'clock, so the two took the cinnabar home and wanted to try if it was effective first. After returning home, the computer was still playing the Great Compassion mantra. Nayuniu told her best friend, and the two sprinkled cinnabar along the wall. Nayuniu was responsible for the right side, and her best friend was responsible for the left side, sprinkling from the door to the inside. When Nayuniu started sprinkling, everything was normal, but when she sprinkled to the far right corner of the sofa, there was a sizzling sound, just like the sound of raw meat on an iron plate when barbecuing. Moreover, the cinnabar powder formed an arc when falling, then floated outwards, all floating in the outer corner. At that time, Nayuniu was still thinking about what kind of strange chemical reaction this was, because she didn't understand. Her best friend was also very curious and came to see this strange phenomenon. Then suddenly, Nayuniu reacted, and took her best friend and ran out. After that, the two never went back to that house, but their things were all inside, and they had to go back. So her aunt told them another method: let them go to the mall to turn around and get rid of the bad luck on their bodies, and then find a temple for help. The two best friends went to the local Guandi temple for help, and finally, an old man at the temple entrance said he could help. But the old lady who was in charge was old and didn't go to the temple often, so she let them leave a phone number, saying that when the old lady went, she would notify them. So the two went to Nayuniu's home first, in another district of Xinxiang. After staying at home for 2 days, the old lady finally called to say that the old lady had gone to the temple and let Nayuniu go there as soon as possible. The two went there, and the old lady was blessing a young man with a Buddha statue. After waiting for half an hour, the old lady finished and came over to ask Nayuniu what to see. Nayuniu replied that she wanted to see Feng Shui and the house. The old lady took a look at the two sisters and then asked Nayuniu to buy incense. After buying it, the old lady started to spread the fragrance in the middle of the hall, without saying anything in the middle. When the incense burned to nearly half, the old lady took it down, swept it over Nayuniu and her best friend, and then sat down and began to tell. The old lady asked, "Is the house you live in yours?" Nayuniu shook her head and said no. The old lady said, "Then you should move away quickly." Nayuniu was very curious and asked the old lady what was going on inside. The old lady said, "There has always been something there, and you two girls can't suppress it?" Nayuniu said, "Is the cabinet in the house moving all day?" The old lady nodded and said, "It happens every day." The old lady muttered a few words and then said, "It all appears to let you see, move away quickly, you are fine, give you clothes." Nayuniu and her best friend were very curious and asked what it was. The old lady didn't say at first, but finally, after being entangled by Nayuniu and her best friend, she said to worship all the statues in the store first. The two did as the old lady said, and worshipped the statues in the front hall and the back hall again, and then the old lady sat down and told them that it was not a person, but a fox, and the Taoist cultivation was not shallow either. So since the house is not your own, move away quickly. This thing is not easy to deal with. And told Nayuniu that when they move, they should drive to the main road and set off firecrackers to prevent them from following them again. After that, the two found a moving company and moved their things away. This incident also caused a great impact in the community where they rented. It is said that the developer knew about it, and after the landlord knew, he also sold the. I'm ready to assist you with translations. Please provide the text you need translated, and specify the target language.